Do you know what the single most important metric for success is as a distance runner? In other words, if you only knew one thing about 10 runners standing on the starting line of a race, and you had to predict which runner was going to win, what would you want to know? Well, that metric is your overall mileage, and we know this through a lot of different ways. Number one, there's almost no pro runner who runs low mileage. We also know through the research of Dr. Steven Seiler, arguably considered one of the world's top exercise physiologists for endurance athletes, that the number one most correlated metric with your success as a distance runner is your overall mileage. This was reinforced to me by my college cross-country coach, and it's just the lived experience of almost every high-level runner. So I want to teach you how to make running more mileage easier. So in this video, we're gonna share 10 of my best strategies for how to make easy mileage a little bit more manageable so that you can run more and get faster. First thing we're gonna do is actually, before we ever start running more, is let's spend 4 to 8 weeks doing more strength training than we're currently used to. And this is gonna help build the structural capacity for that extra mileage, so that when you do start running more, we're gonna reduce your injury risk, and we're also just gonna make you feel sturdier. We're gonna reduce the likelihood of all those little aches and pains, those niggles, those things that typically crop up when you start running more mileage than what you're used to in the past. So let's get consistent with our strength training before we start building our mileage, and you're gonna feel a lot better doing so. Another way to make running more mileage a lot easier is just to run more days per week, because you can easily tack on an extra day if it's only a short 3 to 4 mile run. Next thing you know, you've just run an extra 3 or 4 miles in a way that is very, very manageable. So running more days per week is a really good strategy. So if you're currently running maybe 3 to 5 days a week, let's start by adding an extra day. Let's keep the paces very, very easy, and we'll just see how your body responds to that additional day of training. Over time, you can gradually add even more days of training until you're at about 6 or 7 days. And by spreading out more mileage over more days of running, you're making the total mileage just a lot easier to manage as you're experiencing that mileage. We should also eliminate our hard workouts during the early phases of our mileage building process. Because when we start running more mileage than we're ever used to, while at the same time we're still prioritizing hard workouts and the intensity that goes with that, this is often a recipe for injury, a recipe for you just feeling really bad and some niggle popping up. We don't want that to happen. So while you are in this uncharted territory of higher mileage, let's reduce the workouts. Maybe you're doing one easy workout a week. Maybe you reduce the workouts to 0 and you don't do any hard workouts. But sometimes we've got to focus more on mileage and volume than we do intensity. And if we are trying to run more than we have, this is a good opportunity for that. If we want to reduce the likelihood of injury while we're building mileage, we should also try to vary the stress that we're experiencing as much as possible. So that's why I really like to see runners run on varied terrain in varied shoes. So let's rotate 2 to 3 different pairs of running shoes throughout the week, and we can run off-road. Maybe you're running on grass, like here I am right now. Maybe you're on one of my favorite running surfaces ever, the crushed cinder walking path or running path. I love these surfaces. Any off-road running that you're gonna be doing is gonna change the stress that your feet and lower legs experience. No one footstep is gonna be exactly like another one before it. And so we are reducing the likelihood that you are going to get hurt because we're not just doing the same thing over and over and over again. So this is a little micro tweak to your approach. Vary terrain, rotating your shoes, that really helps with reducing injury, especially when you're running more than ever. Now, another way to make higher mileage a lot easier for you is to actually literally make it easier by using a product like Lever. Now, Lever is supporting our YouTube channel, so big thanks to them for sponsoring this video. Lever is a very unique treadmill attachment that lets you literally reduce your body weight so that you're not experiencing as much impact force through your legs. Now, Pro runner Connor Winter is getting ready for hopefully a sub 210 marathon later this year, and he's currently using Lever, and I was able to talk to him recently about how he likes to use this product to help him with the 100+ mile weeks that he's doing in training. So let's listen to Connor.
My name is Connor Winter, and I'm a professional marathoner with 10 Elite and a user of the Lever. So my favorite way to use the Lever is when I need a recovery run or a double to take off some weight, but then allows me to go faster as well. So I feel better.
And if you want to try the Lever system, just go to levermovement.com. You can use code STRENGTH20. That's going to save you 20% on any of the systems that they offer. So big thanks to Lever for their support of Strength Running's YouTube channel. Now, another very practical suggestion is get a treadmill. If you have the ability and the space to buy a treadmill, this is a really great strategy for those of you who live through winter, or maybe you live in Miami and you're trying to run through hot weather, very humid conditions all the time. A treadmill, or even a gym membership where you have access to a treadmill, is just an amazing way to stay more consistent with your training. It'll make sure that you don't miss runs due to weather, and you always have that training tool available so that you can always be focusing on being consistent with your training. So I'm a big fan of treadmills. I know a lot of folks have questions like, are treadmill miles worth the same as miles outside? Yes, the differences are so negligible that I wouldn't worry about that at all. I would very much instead worry about not being consistent without the use of something like a treadmill. Now, our next strategy is just to slow down. When you are focusing on volume, trying to run more than you ever have before, you're probably going to be stressed. Now, let's not also be stressed with intensity. We did talk about reducing or even eliminating workouts for a brief period of time when we're trying to run more mileage, but another related strategy here is just to reduce the effort of those easy runs. You know, I once had a really great conversation with Matt Meyer. He's a sub-elite runner up in Boulder, Colorado, who sometimes runs very, very high mileage. I think he's run 140 miles a week in one given training week, and he's a big fan of dog shit pace. Excuse the language, but it's his way of describing slow miles, of just running no particular pace, not even worrying about if you're in zone 2. And the focus is simply on getting in the miles, not worrying about the pace whatsoever. This is a very good way to get yourself used to higher mileage without then worrying about the pace that you're doing that mileage at. So when all else fails, let's just run really slow. I also want you to think in terms of months, not weeks. This is a long-term perspective that can be really great for helping you reduce the likelihood of taking shortcuts. You know, if you really want to hit 50 miles in a week and you know you're going to be at 48 by the end of the week, you might tack on a couple extra miles on your final run of the week to try to hit this number. But in reality, mileage numbers are somewhat arbitrary. Yes, more is generally better, but your body rarely knows the difference between 49, 50, 52. It's all about the same. And so thinking in terms of months rather than weeks really helps you focus on the long term, not take those shortcuts, and not try to hit some arbitrary number so that you think you're doing a good job. You're already doing a good job. If you're trying to run more, you don't have to cut those corners. So think a little bit more long-term. Pay attention to monthly mileage and even annual mileage levels, and that is going to set you up to think more long-term. Also, I have always found it very helpful to set a schedule for myself. You know, maybe it's every day I wake up at 6:15, I'm out the door by 6:45. Maybe it's something different for you. Maybe you prefer running after work every day, right after you get to the gym. Whatever it is, have a schedule so that when you run during the day is not up in the air. It is set, it is already scheduled, there's no wiggle room in your schedule. You know what you're doing, you know when you're doing it, and it's just much easier to be consistent with your training when you have this schedule. So if you are trying to run more and more and more, having that reliable schedule already in place is going to enhance your consistency and just make the stress of running a lot a little bit more manageable for you. Now, if you are running a lot, maybe you're running 6 or 7 days a week, maybe you're running 50 or 60 miles a week, and you're still looking for additional strategies to run more mileage, the next step that we're gonna take is to run double sessions. Yes, you can run twice in a day, and it does actually make running all that mileage a little bit easier, because going for a 12-mile run on a Tuesday sometimes is harder than doing, say, 7 in the morning and then 5 in the evening. This splitting up of the mileage makes each run less daunting, but it also is an effective strategy for making the mileage less stressful. So one of the big reasons why elite runners can run 110, 120 miles a week is that they're actually not running 7 times per week. They're likely running 9, 10, or 11 times per week. A lot of pro runners will double, let's see, 5 times in a week. And so their long run will not be a double session, it'll just be one long run. And then they'll likely have 1 day a week, which is an easier day with only 1 run. But all the other days, they're gonna be split up with 2 somewhat medium distance runs. This is a very common schedule among elites, and it's because if you're running a lot, it's easier to break it up. Sort of like if you're running 30 miles a week, it's easier to do that in 4 runs than it is to do that in just 1 run during the week. Splitting it up means it's less stressful per run, thereby making it a lot more manageable. I hope you find this helpful as you go through your journey to run more mileage, to run higher mileage levels, and you're gonna become a better runner because of it. Let's always prioritize injury prevention, and let's remember, sometimes the only thing that's standing in the way between us and our goals is simply making the decision to attack those goals with a little bit more vigor. So if you are gonna run more mileage, and I hope you do, I hope this video gave you a lot of strategies to do that. And also a big thanks again to our video sponsor, Lever. You can go to levermovement.com, use code STRENGTH20. You can get 20% off of any of the systems that they offer. You can set this thing up on your treadmill in about 5 to 10 minutes. Then it takes about 30 seconds for you to loop in, and it's just super easy. It's very effective, and it's trusted by a lot of pro runners and physical therapists. So again, thank you, Lever, and good luck as you try to run more mileage.